Why is he going over there? No! Tank! What is this? Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back for round 3 of our Resto Druid Pug Adventures, where we go from 0 to hero with no add-ons, except for details, and the default starter talent build. We are, of course, unconnected to our Raider.io, anonymous and everything like that, with our good old Resto Druid touching grass, and probably after this video we'll change his name further to keep our anonymity going as we continue through the Pug Universe. In this dungeon, I was a whopping 447, had some decent trinkets as well. I got a coagulated Genosaur blood and a tear stone through some pretty good luck, and I joined a pug to do a 13 fortified Murazan's Rise. In this dungeon, I had the most deaths yet. We went to 71 deaths throughout this dungeon and had a lot of interesting experiences. From the moment that I joined it with this key, I knew it was going to be kind of interesting, and I was really not disappointed through the first boss's room as we were clearing a lot of the tier trash. We could kind of quickly see as we were fighting a number of the Megases that just kicks were just instantly going through, not being made. We were seeing the tank out DPSing the regular DPS very rapidly. And so for me, this is a really good opportunity to see how far I could stretch things when it comes to my Druid gameplay, Druid prowess, I guess, because everything that possibly could go off would go off. And this is something that a lot of people have always talked about in my own stream of, okay, how are you able to deal with pugs when all of this sort of damage is going off? And so big shout out to everybody who's subscribed to the stream, who's subscribed to the Patreon and everything to support the content. If you want to know more about that, check it in the description down below. And so for us, it was really a huge challenge of whether or not we'd be able to survive some of the incoming hits from constant corroding volleys going out from Megases. We were even having balls coming out from the Maiden that were killing people off as we were going through the trash. And so it took a pretty good amount of time, but we also have, lower-ish level key. And so we had, like 460, 470 sort of eye level, I think, for some of the gamers. So we're kind of just muscling our way through that trash. On to tier. This one, of course, I was really expecting some not great baits, and I had some not good ones myself, but nobody really expects the full frontal onto the party wiping you out after the intermission is over. Why is he going over there? It's not... What is this? I also have no idea why they were going out like super far for dispels, but that was another issue in its entirety. The second time around went much better, and even though of course we're only on a fortified week, there were a lot of splash damage that we had to deal with from the sparks from tier, but a lot of this, it becomes a lot easier from like my perspective when I have the healing background already to know some of the damage and some of the pressure that can happen. We had a couple orbs going through, I believe, in the intermission phase, and having to like hunt people down who are way out of range and almost like eating frontals from tier was a little bit much, but we kind of just kept on chugging, and I made sure to stay very far away from tank frontals despite them kind of like chasing after me sometimes. Before we get to what happened after that first boss fight, first let's give a special thank you to boot.dev, our sponsor for this video. They have an amazing site that teaches back-end web development from start to finish in both Python and Go's programming languages. They built a fantastic website to be able to teach people how to code, and doing so in a self-paced environment with a very amazing RPG game to get you writing as much code as possible as early as possible. While going through these lessons and while going through it online, it can be kind of intimidating not having somebody there to be able to assist, and that's why they put together Boots, their powerful AI wizard that's been trained on each of the lessons and can walk you through any issues you might be having along the way. It's an AI that will ask questions to help you understand rather than just feeding you the answers. They also have a fantastic Discord community with many active members to help you overcome your challenges on your journey through backend development. Before you buy, you also have the opportunity to be able to demo through all of these lessons. So be sure to use our code AutomaticJak on the site for 25% off your first purchase. Huge thank you to boot.dev. Now, after that tier boss, we encounter my worst nightmare, and it's the stairs. Having so much damage, and honestly, I thought at first when I was going through this that it was just really, really tough and nobody was using any sort of defensives. But then I started noticing the casts going through back to back on the Marauder for the displaced chromosomes. You get a little spoiled whenever you're raiding and playing at a higher end because some of the one thing that must be kicked is almost inevitably kicked by people. And so I didn't even realize it in the moment that these casts were going through onto it. But it was, in some respects, kind of a good experience for me to see just how brutal it is to heal these dungeons, because I was popping everything. And while I have a pretty cruddy talent build without Grove Guardians on hand, I still was just throwing everything on the table. Full Incarn, Flourish, Trank, just trying to build up as many stacks for my mastery as I possibly could on hand, just to try to keep people alive. It was absolutely disgusting. Now, frontals were the bane of our existence on tier, and they also were the bane of our existence in the Atrium, where you usually fight the Time Ways boss on fall. Pretty much the very first anomalies, frontal just kind of crushed us. Oh no, the untwist! The untwist! No! Stop! Tank! Oh no, moments away from disaster. It also made me really notice how bad the dispel profiles are, the spell markers are for the default frames. So we kind of just had a whole bunch of fun getting frontal by those mobs and trying to force our way to survival. Too many Rift Mages were being pulled as we were dealing with this. Casts going off left and right. The Infinite Burn, I think is what it's called, from the Infinite Rift Mage, was going off at similar times as you were having Bloom or another Infinite Burn going off as well. So it was just stacking amounts of dispels on hand. It was sort of a lesson in okay, you have to be able to save who you can. Seeing somebody at low HP and you can't dispel them, and they got a dot on them, just was more and more garbage that you had to deal with. So this was a nice opportunity for me just to figure out who I could save, who I could reasonably keep alive, and then other people you just can't build up hots fast enough, and you're like, okay, well, I guess that person's going back to the graveyard because I have to save who I can. Surprisingly, at least for me, the boss that we had the easiest time with was actually the Time Lost Battlefield. We had some deaths on the trash for this one, but I believe this is after the hotfixes where the Blade Storm doesn't instantly melee somebody. So thankfully, nobody was really eating Blade Storms or anything, so we actually had a pretty easy time with that one. But we did not have that easy of a time with Morchi. From the very beginning on Morchi, I kind of saw that we were having some problems. Even despite trying to ping to be able to help everybody out, people were just kind of sitting inside the hitbox of Morchi, getting AoE'd. That led to some of the first deaths I think that we had on hand. I did have Mass Entangle from the baseline tree, which was really, really nice. Really cool to be able to have. But unfortunately, some of them just naturally started getting broken out. And so people eating frontals and eating more ads as well really quickly put me on the back foot of just trying to make sure I was keeping everybody alive. We also had some people who were not too familiar with the dungeons, which is bound to happen, no flame. But had a very fun experience where people were trying to keep us safe from the ads by attacking them, and that did not end up working out. So it was a fun experience. We finished this fight with almost everybody dead. It was pretty much just me and the tank at the very end of it, because people just sort of refused to fight off or just to trap these ads. So as a result, we got Morchi down, and we have 2 minutes to be able to kill the last boss. We're also 32 deaths on the counter. So as I might have mentioned before, this dungeon ends with over 70 deaths, and it all comes down to the trash mobs at the end. Not having any interrupts, or not having people staying on top of interrupts, and not having access to an interrupt myself was really where we started stacking up death after death after death after death after death over and over again with these Marauder casts with the the displaced chromosomes. I think at one point we even got some of these Marauders pretty decently low, and then the displaced chromosomes kept stacking higher and higher and higher to the point that I think it was double their max HP. It was a little bit difficult to see from the baseline UI as well, which is a problem. They just kept on stacking higher to the point that we'd have to burn 2 or 3 health bars worth of them just to be able to properly end up killing them off. This boss, or it's not even a boss, it was just a trash pack at the end, just completely farmed us. Luckily for us, we had the power of the Sandman to constantly continue patching us up throughout this because we really needed it. And again, this is the area, like I mentioned before, where I was just trying to find some kind of way to keep everybody alive. And then my strategy ended up boiling down to actually not putting that much focus in healing the tank and just hoping the tank would be able to keep himself alive while I was trying to spam the DPS. We continued to get a lot of chromosome casts going off, but once we finally kind of realized that we needed to get all of those kicks taken care of, it got quite a lot easier. I was pretty much leaning on every single defensive on hand. I was making really good value out of Renewal, which made me really appreciate the ability and then realize that Monk has that ability, but on like a 12-second cooldown on hand. So we finally got that trash pack dead, and we go into Chronolord Deos' room with 70 deaths, and at this point I think we're like 5 or 10 minutes over the timer. On this boss, I very rapidly jumped into position to start soaking up any of the orbs and like be in control of having those orbs dropped and be able to set those up, because I knew that if there's going to be pugs, if there's going to be any way to sort of control the damage, it's a lot better if I just take care of it myself. Druid felt really good on this fight, though. There was a lot of burst damage, and I think we copped up one death due to just people standing in sand. But overall, the control in this fight, especially since there's not really any mechanics that pugs can mess up, was actually good. And this is one of the reasons why I like this boss fight, especially compared to a lot of other encounters, is like, especially as a healer, learning, or somebody's coming back to the game and is new. It doesn't have to be every boss fight, but having a few different boss fights where all the damage that goes out is pretty much unavoidable, and it's just the healer having to do healer things to make sure that they keep everybody alive on hand. And so with quite a few deaths going on hand, we were 47 I think on our timer. So I think we were like 15 or 16 minutes over our time on hand on this one. This was the most disastrous of hugs that I've been in, but I think it was also one of my highest keys. Yeah, I think I gained like 20 or 30 IO just by doing this key anyway. Got it up to like 13 or 1400 IO at the end of this dungeon. I think after this point is when I crafted my Lariat and my Signet of Titanic Insight as well. And so it took a little bit of time before we were able to really get the ball rolling. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you're enjoying our Pug adventures, be sure to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments down below. And we are going to be continuing on with our Pug challenge going forward, as we are almost at that 0 to hero mark. We're like 17 or 1800 IO, I think, at the time of me recording this video. And so hopefully by the next one, we'll be very close to our goal. Thanks so much for watching, guys.